Rogue Radio. Now available on Mixcloud at mixcloud.com/Rogue Country. Keep it rogue.
What's going on, Into the Vandals? Welcome to episode 49 of Into the Van. I'm Mike West. We are so close to hitting 50 episodes. I'm really excited to hit that milestone. I can't believe I've done it for 50 episodes. I can't believe people have listened for 50 episodes. Thank you so much for tuning in and supporting it. I do really fucking appreciate it. How have you guys been? What have you been up to? Have you got everything sorted? Have you done nothing on your to-do list? I hope so. Yeah, I've been having fun. David Quinn's last episode was really fun to do. I got some great feedback from it. It was nice to chat to someone I hadn't known before. Today, I've known Banjo Jen quite a while. We've only met once, which is the weird thing about this scene and with music is you hear about people and you hear about certain folks and music and stuff, and then you very rarely run into them. We got to play a Hen House Presents a gig last year, which was awesome. It was great to finally get to see her live, and I knew I had to have her on the podcast at some point. So yeah, we finally made it happen. But before that, let's get into it. How has your past 2 weeks been since the last episode? I hope you're doing well. I'm doing really well. I've got some great news. I'm going to be opening for the Bridge City Sinners on August the 8th of this year in Bradford at the Underground. That's the Bridge City Sinners. I'm so fucking excited for that. They're one of my favourite bands. They're folk punk fury, and I'm really looking forward to fucking playing that. Shout out to Chris, who got me onto that bill. Chris Stover is also a phenomenal musician I'm going to be having on this podcast soon. I'm currently listening to his new album, which is coming out soon, and it's fucking phenomenal. It's going to be amazing. I hope you're doing well. We've got some Too Heavy t-shirts available back in Bandcamp now, so over on my Bandcamp store. They're not country enough, not blues enough, not folk enough. Too Heavy t-shirts are back. You can get them on my Bandcamp store at mike333west.com. While they're still available, I've got Mothman t-shirts still. Thank you so much to everyone who's been listening. It's been a trip to release a song and to have so many people vibe with it. I'm excited for the Bridge City Sinners show and going forward for some exciting shows and some recordings. Mike West and the Missing Links is going to be a thing, which is going to be a trip to finally get to do live. I'm going to drop you a little taste of Mothman now if you've not heard it. I really hope if you have listened to it, you've enjoyed it. If this is the first time you're hearing it, go and listen to the full thing. It's really good in my personal and professional and humble opinion. And let's get down to it with Banjo Jen. Her single, Fine Line, came out on April 29th. It's phenomenal. We get into it here. Her new album is going to be out in September. And it was great to talk to someone who's been such a big part of the scene for so long. When I first started playing, I think me and Jen maybe started around the same time, but she made waves in Sheffield, and she's one of the pillars of the Americana root scene in the UK, and I was really excited to talk to her because she has the talent and the songwriting and the live skills to back up her reputation. It's a phenomenal thing. So let's fucking get down to it, guys. Without further ado, this is episode 49 of Into the Van with Mike West and Banjo Jen. So, yeah, thanks so much for making the time to talk to us. With Banjo Jen, how long have you been performing, or when did you start thinking to be called Banjo Jen and perform under that name?
It was a nickname I was given, actually. So I moved to Sheffield in 2015, and had a banjo on my back basically. I just started learning to play sort of a year or so before, and when I came to Sheffield, I actually moved in with another girl called Jenny. And so it became a way to differentiate me. Everyone just called me Banjo Jen. And there was quite a few Jens actually at the time. And so, it was a nickname. And I started playing with my friend Ash Gray, who I'd met in Sheffield. So at the start, it was just part of a country trio. We did like covers, some of Ash's own songs, but I was mainly just playing backup. And so it wasn't until, when would it have been? 2016, I started doing some open mics with some of my own songs. And so that was the first time, I suppose, that officially I performed as Banjo Jen.
Yeah. No, it's so interesting. Like, I sometimes kick myself. I don't know if I should have just because obviously there's like the White Buffalo or Beans on Toast, or something that's just a bit that it's not just my name. Because I just feel it has, like, with Banjo Jen, it's like, what you're getting, like, kind of
does what it says on the tin.
Yeah, it does what it says on the tin. It's a really good thing. And I think that it's a nickname that it's not a self-coined nickname, because that'd be really cringy. But to have like a nickname anointed to you and you to like carry on is a really cool thing. What was it about the banjo that made you want to pick it up?
Good question. I've been asked that a bit and I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. I think so my interest in kind of more Appalachian, bluegrassy, old-timey kind of music started when I saw a dance team years ago, like 20 years ago. And there were an Appalachian sort of clog dance team at a folk festival. And I just loved the music that they were dancing to. I loved the dancing, but I also loved the music. And I ended up joining that team and dancing with them, because dance was always my main hobby, my main interest for years. And so obviously as I was dancing, I was getting more into that kind of music and loved the sound of the banjo in that music. And for some reason, I think it was like some kind of early midlife crisis, because I got to about 30 and I just decided I was going to buy a banjo and try and learn how to play it. But it wasn't like a deep burning desire or anything. It was kind of more of a whim thing that like I thought, I'll buy one and I'll see if I can give it a go.
No, that's awesome. My mate had a similar midlife crisis and bought a banjo. And I have that banjo because he gave up on it within like a week. So he just gave it to me and he's never asked for it back. And now it's like in a guitar case over there that I've been needing to like tune up and get it restrung and cleaned. But was there anything, so the dancing and that music, was that your first exposure to it? Because I don't know if it's kind of true for everyone, but I think the Oh Brother Where Art Thou film from 2001, I think was quite a big turning point for roots music in like kind of like modern popular culture. Was the dance thing the first real exposure you had to that type of music?
I guess probably so. Yeah, thinking back, because I would have seen, don't want to give my age away, but I would have seen that dance team in like the late 90s. And up until then, I suppose I'd only really, country music was sort of on my radar because my mum had listened to John Denver a lot, and my auntie and uncle were really into Dolly Parton and Johnny Cash. So I kind of knew the classics and that sort of music, but I didn't really know the more traditional old-timey kind of stuff until I joined the dance team. And then the fiddler John knows loads of the old fiddle tunes. And so, I was suddenly introduced to all the things that, would be on like Oh Brother Where Art Thou, which came out a few years later and made it a bit more mainstream, I guess.
Because that came out when I was 11.
Right.
And that was what kind of like, I watched it when it came out, I think, or I rented it from Blockbuster, so it must have been like after it had been released and I got to see it. And that was what kind of like woke me up to that type of music. But coming from like a dance background and having that in your head, a lot of your songs do have that kind of rhythm and movement to dance to. Is that something that it's like in your head that's always been like the focus, is to have that type of expression combined with your music?
Yeah, do you know, I think it's not intentional, but it's always happened. So I think it must be a subconscious thing, because I'm definitely a dancer rather than a musician. You know, I've come to music late. I've had to learn everything. It's not something that comes particularly natural to me as such, whereas the dancing does. And I think that, yeah, the fact that I've always danced and had to work with rhythm has a massive impact on my music. Yeah, because when I listen to my stuff, so much of it does have that very rhythmic feel compared to a lot of banjo music.
No, it's great. It's got that real stomp to it. And what I liked about Fine Line was it does have that like groove and rhythm and stomp to it, while also being like, it's not just a piece that you dance to, it's a piece you can enjoy like anywhere and everywhere, but it does have this would kill at one of those dance halls with that type of people around it.
Yeah, I suppose so, like the sort of square dance, like traditional kind of American I can see it working in that situation. It wasn't intentional, but like I say, a lot of my tunes, I don't know, just seem to be like quite rhythmic, I suppose.
Awesome. And moving to Sheffield from 2015, where did you move from?
I'd been living in Barnsley for 10 years before that.
Cool.
So I had a very a very conventional, settled life before that, with a very responsible job. And I kind of, I like to say I ran away to join the circus, because I threw it all up in the air and came to Sheffield with a banjo on my back and not much else, to be honest.
No, that's awesome. Was there anything in your head when you did that type of thing? Was it just to like start a new chapter and stuff? Because that can be like a really scary and intimidating thing to just kind of move away from what you already know.
Yeah, it was really scary. It was a combination of factors, I think. I'd settled down quite young and, you know, bought a house, and I was a teacher. So it was a massively like responsible job, and like older kids as well. So I was, you know, it was sixth form, and I was trying to get them the grades to get into uni. And, you know, so I'd had a lot of years of working very intensely and, you know, throwing myself into that. You know, it's a very consuming job, and I really cared about doing it right, you know. And I think, I'd got to a point where I needed some kind of change. And then what sort of really, I suppose, impacted it as well was I got a health condition. I got fibromyalgia, and all of a sudden it was like, well, I don't know if I can teach anymore, because my body and my brain are like going weird. And, you know, it just sort of made me question loads of things. I was in a lovely relationship for a long time. Absolutely amazing guy, lovely house, dog, great job. But for some reason, I got to this point where I was like, there was something in me that just needed change. And I decided to, it was the toughest decision of my life, you know, but I decided to kind of make a bit of a fresh start. And it kind of happened by accident, I suppose, that I ended up in Sheffield and sort of in the music scene, because I'd met a few musicians, and sort of that catapulted the music a lot faster, I suppose, than it would have done if I was just hanging out on my own and didn't know anyone. It all kind of spiraled really. As soon as I moved here, I got very involved in just all the music stuff, and it's such an amazing community here. It's easy to get sucked in.
That's the thing. Like, as an outsider, like I'm obviously in the world for like the Northwest, and seeing the Sheffields, and especially around like Martin Bedford and the Honeybees, Blues Club and Wagon Wheel and all that stuff. Was that already in place when you got there in 2015? Was that scene already established and on the rise, or were you kind of in like watching the formation of it?
No, it was already established, but not for too long, I don't think, as in the Honeybee Blues Club. But I mean, Martin's been
around,
involved for a long time. But that sort of incarnation of like the specific sort of Honeybee Blues Club, I think, had started maybe a year or two before. So I guess it was in its early-ish days compared to now. But yeah, Martin took a chance on me and put me on, I think it was Peace in the Park, the first one I played for him. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's a free festival that they put on in Sheffield each year. It's not happened, unfortunately, obviously during the pandemic, and I don't think it's happening this year because they couldn't raise the funds. It doesn't, it's just volunteers and it takes quite a lot of, just people's funding out of the generosity, like they don't get any extra help. So I don't think it's going on, but yeah, he put me on that. And that was one of the first sort of times I think I played for the Honeybee Blues Club. And then obviously since then, he's put me on at quite a lot of events and stuff. And it's been lovely because like the audience are so supportive and, they come to a lot of gigs. So yeah, it feels like a really lovely sort of little community.
Awesome. And who are the other artists around you and around that scene that are like the regulars of it that you've always kind of like started with and like risen up with?
I guess like Ash Gray would be the main one because like I played with him and he was instrumental in like giving me the confidence to perform my songs because I wouldn't sing in front of anyone. So when I got to Sheffield and started playing with him, he really wanted me to do harmonies and sing along on choruses with all the things. I was like, I can't do it. And he took me to the studio and sort of got me on a mic and took me to open mics and stuff. So he was really instrumental in helping me. So I've always, been a big supporter of Ash, and his music's great. There's also Fargo Railroad Company, who I know you know well.
Yep. Unfortunately.
They play a lot for Martin. And then there's obviously all like he gets a lot of like touring blues, usually blues guys coming through. So yeah, there's quite a lot of like cool sort of, they do a combination of like sometimes original stuff, but a lot of the old slide guitar type blues and things. But there's also, Sheffield's just got a massive scene, it's not massive, that's the thing. Sheffield's like a village, but it's got a good music scene in terms of variety because obviously it's famed for more like, you'd got all the stuff back in the 80s, Human League and all that lot coming out. But then Arctic Monkeys obviously then had like the indie band kind of reputation. So there's all that still going on. There's loads of cool like up and coming bands who are nothing to do with blues and country and Americana. And then there's like, lots of cool stuff going on with more the kind of rap side and Franz Von and like there's just like such a variety of acts.
Cool. And with like your own music, who were your biggest influences like when you started like listening to music, and then when you eventually picked up a banjo, like who were you listening to that made you want to play that and keep you playing until like now?
It's really weird, because I don't really think of specific influences for the banjo as such. I don't really listen to that much banjo music, but my influences are all over the shop, really, because I was a grunge kid. So in the 90s, that was one of my big things. I loved Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Smashing Pumpkins. And I think, funnily enough, even though my banjo music is absolutely obviously nothing like that, there's still that kind of, I don't know, that idea of like having a bit of grit in there maybe comes from that. Yeah. But also at the same time as being a really grungy kid, I've always loved proper pop and melodic. Like I'm just a sucker for melody, basically. A melody and a beat is all I need, really. So like I've always loved ABBA, Erasure, Deacon Blue, like what I call like just like good pop. Like, so there's all of that. But then obviously there's the more folky country leaning stuff. One of the first things that got me into that sort of maybe more singer-songwriter country stuff was, do you know Eileen Jewell?
Yeah.
So Bob Harris played an Eileen Jewell track. It must have been like early 2000s. and I just absolutely loved it. And I bought her album, Letters from Sinners and Strangers, I think. And that just really kind of hooked me somehow. It's quite bluesy. I don't know, kind of, again, it's got quite a driving beat to a lot of the things, but in quite a laid back, bluesy country kind of way. So I found that quite inspiring. But of course, all this was years before I was to ever pick up a banjo, but I think it just all filters in, you know.
Yeah, it's just been in the ether until you actually pick it up, and then it all kind of like funnels down.
Yeah, there's like bits of, just absolutely everything. Because I mean, I loved the Dixie Chicks album Home. That was like when I went traveling and lived in Canada, that was one of the few CDs I took with me, and I played it to death. Again, back in the early 2000s, I guess. Old Crow Medicine Show, you know, that first sort of main album I absolutely loved. And I love like Frank Turner is like a songwriter I really like, but again, he's very gritty and punky in his like acoustic stuff. So yeah, all kinds of influences really. There was one banjo one that I saw quite early on as I was learning, a guy called Morgan O'Kane. I think it's Morgan O'Kane. But he's like a busker on the New York subways. And I just loved his energy. Like he played it like absolutely kind of thrashing it, sat on a suitcase with a, you know, whatever they call it, like so you can beat the case. And yeah, I don't know, there was just something about that idea of just having like that foot pedal beat and the way he was playing. That was quite inspiring. And that was one of maybe the turning points where I realised I wanted to do more frail and claw hammer banjo, very rhythmic, rather than, you know, the picking bluegrassy style stuff. Yeah.
No, that's cool. And I think like the grunge stuff, I think has had more of an influence on the modern roots scene than people either want to admit or care to admit, because, you know, you only have to look at the Nirvana Unplugged album for like the Lead Belly covers and stuff, and you know, checked shirts, beards, and long hair, like that. Like I'm guilty of that as fuck. And it is that type of look that is that grungy scene, but it's like acoustic instruments and stripping everything back and being more honest with stuff. I think grunge does have a lot of explaining to do for the alt country and like the more modern alt country punk, folk punk scene.
Yeah. And I mean, I love, so like the Minneapolis scene in the sort of late 80s, two of my like absolute top favourite bands of all time have come out of there, which is Soul Asylum, will always be my favourite band, and the Jayhawks. And you can hear, like, especially in things like Soul Asylum, there's that punk, kind of punky grunge influence, but then also it's that alt country where it's got a nod to more country leaning stuff, and you know, ones like the old 97s as well that came out of that. Like I love all that as well.
No, cool. And lyrically, like, what I enjoy about your stuff is you can easily, if you have a banjo and you're stomping, you can go like the kind of not generic route, but the traditional route of the same old type of like topics and things, but you've always had like this spin and perspective on it that's been really interesting. Do you think that's been from like your pop influences and like your more broader influences that you haven't kind of fell into those pitfalls of like cliches?
Well, that's nice of you to say. Thanks. I don't know. Yeah, I guess maybe it's just because the influences are from all over, and I think I've always been. I don't know, there's definitely a time for introspection, and I like songs that are quite heartfelt, and I've certainly written more of those in the last few years. They're not recorded yet, but you know, if I'm playing live, I'll do some of those. But I just get a bit bored of like thinking about, I always bring my own spin and perspective to a song, but I don't want every song to be about my experience and my feelings. I quite like, I get inspiration from stuff around me. So if there's a good story or character, or I get a feeling about something, I'd rather explore that than do yet another song about, my insecurities or love problems or whatever. You know what I mean? I do like kind of heartfelt songs, but let's face it, there's like so many millions of songs about love, aren't there? Having said that, obviously Fine Line that I'm bringing out is about love. It's one of my few actual love songs.
And that's a story song. Is that one of those ones where it's written from a character's perspective and it's a love song like that? Or is that a more personal
actually
one?
Fine Line's quite personal. Yeah, it's kind of about what I was mentioning earlier about that sort of throwing my life up in the air and having to move on, feeling that draw and that kind of lost love, even though that love was very nice and very good, that sort of needing to let something go. So Fine Lines, I mean, it's got a lot of artistic license, but that one is actually based on quite personal experiences, I'd say.
Did you feel like you needed, because obviously this is like maybe 6-7 years since that happened, do you feel like you've needed that time to have some distance to be able to write something about that? Because I was talking to an artist the other day, and it's, you don't want to cheapen your emotional experiences and emotional moments by instantly taking them and writing a song about it. Sometimes you need to be able to sit in it and reflect on it for a while, and then if a song comes out of it down the line. But I always hate when I'm catching myself experience something and then I'm like, oh, that might work in a song, and I'm like, just feel for 5 seconds, you piece of shit.
It's an interesting question. I think I'm maybe a bit the opposite, I think I'm more when it's raw, like when I'm feeling it, sometimes the inspiration comes, because Fine Line was actually written probably, I guess more like 2017. So it was quite soon in, maybe a year or so in, but I mean, it varies obviously, but now I tend to write more current feelings actually. Not always, but I think maybe more often than not it's kind of dealing with it now.
So it's like while you're mid-argument, you're picking up a banjo and repeating what they're saying back to them.
There's definitely a few of those songs.
How come, obviously, Lost and Found came out in 2018, you wrote this in 2017 stuff. Was there a decision-making process behind what went on Lost and Found and what's coming on Cloud of Dust?
Lost and Found was basically the main ones I had ready at the time, because that was the first recordings. So they were like the four originals that are on there. They were like, pretty much the first 4 songs I wrote. Not quite, because the first song I ever wrote is on this next one, actually. But I don't know, they were just the 4 that felt the most polished at the time, because it was all a bit... it was such a new thing. I just wanted something to sell at shows, because I'd just started performing, and I just wanted something out there that showed what I could do. So to be honest, we never really intended Lost and Found to be like a big release or anything. I mean, I didn't do anything about it. I literally just slapped it up on Spotify when it was done. I didn't do any like pre-release stuff. It was more to just have a physical CD to sell at gigs, really. But having said that, I'm still proud of how the songs came out, and that's largely due to Mark Stoney, the producer, because he's just amazing at everything. So like I'm still proud of that EP, but it was basically what was ready to go at the time, because we started recording that in 2017, came out in 2018, and then these songs on Cloud of Dust, I guess the plan behind them was that they're the more country leaning songs, so they kind of felt like they'd go together in a little collection. Whereas when I'm thinking about a full album at some point in the next few years, I sort of felt like these might work just on their own as a little kind of more country style EP. So that's why they're together, really.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. I know I recorded my EP, and I was doing a few tracks in like March of 2017. I was just doing them to try and have something, and then I got booked on a tour at the beginning of April. And I was like, oh shit, I just need to get fucking something out so I can sell it at gigs. What was the response when you first started playing and you had like that CD and stuff, with obviously the playing with like Martin shows and things? Was it a good crowd response? Obviously we're sat here talking, so it must have made some waves.
Yeah, definitely. We had an ICP launch at the Dorothy Paxton Sheffield, and sold a lot of CDs. And then when I was sort of supporting other people, it was quite popular. Really, it surprised me because it just always makes me laugh because I don't really listen to banjo music. I never think anyone's going to want to listen to my songs. But I hope that they're not just like, boring banjo, but it was great, I suppose. And it's amazing how many people still do sort of say, oh, I really like, whatever track. And Sold My Soul for a Dime's always really popular with kids, apparently. I've had so many parents tell me that they can. I'm thinking, oh God, the kids are there singing along to the chorus. Sold my soul for a dime.
That's so good though, that it's taken like a life of its own. That's what you want as an artist, is to have that type of feedback and that response from songs like that.
Yeah, no, it's great. The kids always love my stuff for some reason. But funnily enough, I've got a gig on Monday morning. It's called Concertinis, and it's this program of events where it's for kind of 0 to 5-year-olds, but I suppose more for like the parents, because they get to come to a live music gig. But then there's like props for the kids and stuff. So it's the first time I've done one. But I've got that on Monday, so that's going to be interesting. Songs about, I'm having to edit my set list a little bit. Songs about cheating, murder, whiskey, heartbreak. It's just like, oh, here we go, kids.
Yeah, they've got to learn early. Did you ever watch Parks and Recreation?
Not yet. It's on my watch list.
There's a bit in that where a band gets hired for a kid's birthday party, and they have a song called Sex Hair, and he changes the name of the song to Sex Bears, and he starts singing it, and they're like, the problem with that song isn't hair. And they're like, it's sex. And it's like, no shit. And you have to go write a new one. So as long as you aren't doing that, it's fine.
No, I think we'll be pretty safe. I've just taken out Jack and Jill, which is the murder ballad nursery rhyme, because I was like, it's got quite a repetitive chorus. And I was like, if the kids start singing about, murder on repeat, that's probably not good, because they might link it to the actual nursery rhyme and grow up thinking that Jack and Jill's a murder tale. So I've taken that one out.
Yeah. Do you know what? Considering how weird fairy tales and stuff are, it probably was like a murder.
Well, that's why I wrote it, because I just thought it was always suspicious, like what happened on that hill, So that was the basis for the song.
Yeah. The thing that fucked me up once was I saw online, and it was like, at no point in Humpty Dumpty does anyone ever mention he's an egg. And I was like, oh shit, yeah, like, what the fuck happened to that guy?
Hundreds of pieces.
Yeah. Did they just pull him apart? But I feel like this might segue. I've got in my notes Metalsmith with the question mark next to it because it was in your bio on your website. Elaborate.
Yeah, this is me and my life of being a jack of all trades, master of none. So my degree is in jewellery design and silversmithing. So, yes, I did a 3-year degree at the School of Jewellery in Birmingham, which is very prestigious. Can't do a bloody thing with anything that I learned on my degree. So, yeah, technically, I suppose I have a degree in silversmithing, metal design. But, yeah, I've never really done that much with it. I did try. When I went into teaching, I taught art and design, creative art. So I would definitely bring, elements into that. And then I went sort of part-time when I was teaching to try and do some design work on the side. So my plan was always to sort of build up maybe a bit of a jewellery and metal design business alongside the teaching. But I don't know, to be honest, like looking back, I think my heart was never in it. It was always something that I was all right at, and I'd sort of trained in it, so felt that I should probably do something with it. But yeah, I never really made it happen. And looking back, I think that's probably just because I didn't really have the passion for it. And I didn't know that at the time. I thought I was just being slack. But now that I know what the passion feels like for the songwriting, I realise, that's what I needed. Like, that passion wasn't there for the art and the metal stuff. It is there now for the writing and the music. So yeah, it's just yet another thing that I can kind of do a bit of, but not very well. I've spent my life basically teaching other people to do things better than I can, because I was a much better teacher than I was an art student. I could help other people be really creative.
Well, I think it's interesting because obviously you've always had that kind of creativity in you. And I think it's hard because in the way education is now, it's like the first kind of inclination or passion you have, they're like, well, that's what you're going to do. I think there's a lot of pressure on people growing up. You know, like when you see like a kid and they kick a football and they score a goal by look, they're like, he's going to be a pro footballer. Or a kid will like hit a drum and it'll be in time. They're like, he's going to be, there's like, you kind of get pigeonholed straight away into some stuff. And that pressure can kind of mount to be like, well, that's what I need to do. That's what, and you start kind of convincing yourself that is what you want to do. And the creativity is there. You have that passion there, but it's still trying to find like a way out. And it's not that. And it's, you're getting blocked off. And then you finally find something that clicks and then it makes sense. Yeah.
And I think like if you can do, you know, the more things, the better, really. I mean, I do kind of envy people who know, you know, who've always known what they want to do and have always sort of, you know, known their passion. Because I do sometimes think I wish I'd found this a lot of years earlier when I had more energy and like when I could have maybe explored it in a different way to when you're older with more responsibilities and stuff. So I kind of sometimes envy people, but then I think actually, like, you know, I wouldn't change anything. I like the fact that, I mean, I studied A-level English and always loved writing, which like thinking about it now, I think that comes out in my songwriting, that I love writing. But for many, many years, I just didn't use that because I didn't go on to study English. So it kind of fell by the wayside. But I've always loved writing and poetry. But then like dance was my main hobby. So doing ballet and then doing the more Appalachian step-in type stuff and tap. I've always loved, like I taught photography as well. I was a darkroom specialist. So all the kind of old chemical photography. And I don't know, just having all those creative interests, just makes life more interesting. And maybe if I'd found music in my late teens, early 20s, then I wouldn't have had a chance to explore all those things that I also enjoyed. So yeah,
that's the thing. I think it's important to have that type of stuff, because I know when people are like, I don't have any hobbies, it's like, how hard have you looked? Because there's a lot of shit to do in the world. And it's hard because I think there is a pressure that like, if you don't monetize your hobby, it's not worth anything. But if you're getting enjoyment out of it and you're finding a way to pursue your passion and find out a bit about yourself, that's reward in itself. It doesn't have to be, you know, if you enjoy making jewelry, you can do that and you can sketch designs up. It doesn't mean it has to ever leave the page, but it just means that you've enjoyed the process of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, if kids can be encouraged to be as creative as they can across all disciplines, that's really important. But obviously it's not prioritized, unfortunately, in education.
No, it's not. Like, I remember I wanted to be a teacher for a while and I just saw how PGCs were going and how like the culture was going. I was like, I'm not fucking touching this with a barge pole. But I did have fun teaching. Like, I taught a homeless shelter. I taught music there for a bit and I taught a kids project. And it's, people do like to learn things and people do want to do creative and passionate things, but it's just the setting that it's in always tends to be like the main pullback. Have you found that in your experiences teaching and stuff?
What do you mean? Sorry, like the setting?
Yeah, so it's
as
like
in school or
in school, or it's like if you just sat down with someone and was like, I'm going to teach you how to play banjo and we're going to learn a song, everyone will go, cool. And it's like, I'm going to teach you to play banjo, but we're going to fill out like 3 levels of paperwork first. And we're going to make you do a test at the end of it. They're going to go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
The setting and like the requirements, I think, to teach people and to get people interested can be like,
I found that a lot with so when I was an art teacher, I taught a lot of BTECs. I don't know if you've come across BTEC qualifications, but like they're very tick boxy. They're great in some respects because they have a lot of units, so you can cover a lot of topics and things. So we did some really great projects with the students, but the downside was for every project there was your pass criteria, your merit, your distinction, and all these tick boxes, and they had to do certain things to get this and certain things, and a lot of it is very tick boxy and very data based, and I don't miss any of that, I have to say.
No, and that's what, like, because I did music and like uni and stuff, and the second it's like academic and it's all these tick boxes, it just kills any level of creativity. Like, I was assigned, I had to do like 8 hours of guitar practice a week, and I had to go to a tutor. And I was like, well, I'm not fucking touching a guitar again for the next 3 years, because it just completely like broke it out of me.
Right. Yeah. God. That's pretty regimented, isn't it?
It's just like when people have that drive, like Eddie Van Halen, like the stories go that like his brother used to go to school, Eddie Van Halen wouldn't, and he'd sit on his bed with like a pack of smokes and his guitar, and when his brother came back from school, the cigarettes would be gone and he'd still be in the exact same place with the guitar. And it's like, that's an incredible drive and like focus. But if that had been like he'd been told to do that, we wouldn't have got Van Halen.
Yeah.
But with like the UK country scene, how have you seen it evolve? Because there's not many interviews I could find online with you, but there was one from Forever British Country, and they're talking about like the UK country scene and stuff. How have you seen it kind of grow from your experiences from 2015 to now?
I'm probably the wrong person to ask, because I'm not very good at keeping up with like current country stuff so much. I'd say a bit broader, like Americana. I've been more involved with, like I go to the Americana Music Association conference and showcase and festival in January that they do in London. And I've been to that a couple of times, and then the online one when it was COVID and stuff. So I've found that like that's a really good way to keep on top of like some of the rising sort of stars, and it does feel like it's been a very growing scene over the last few years. I think there's definitely a bit more recognition about roots and Americana kind of music, and then you've got the more, I suppose, what you'd call maybe more commercial country sort of side as well, which I know less about the artists in that scene. But I've watched a few, like, I mean, Kezia Gill did amazing, like, sort of live streams all through lockdown, and, grew a really organic, like, fan base through doing that. And I think she's doing pretty well from what I can tell, on the sort of country side of things. And then, I don't know, there's just like some great artists over here, and it does feel like it's growing and there's more appetite for it. But I don't know, I think there's still more of a draw when it's an international artist coming over. Yeah. All of a sudden the audience comes out the woodwork. If someone's over from America, you can fill a room. But maybe if it was more sort of local talent doing a similar thing, there wouldn't be as big an audience. And I suppose it might be still quite a bit of time before that changes. I don't know.
No, definitely. I remember when I think Tyler Childers was 2020. Yeah, it was January 2020, just before lockdown. And, most country and roots audiences for like the independent stuff, slightly older, crowd, slightly white hair. Tyler Childers sold out shows, young, like teenagers up. I was like, where the fuck have all these people come from? Like, where did they
come out the woodwork?
Like, it absolutely baffled me, but it's interesting to see that there is a demand there. Like, Sierra Farrell's coming over in June. And those have sold really well. Those shows have either sold out or they're on the way to sell out. It's like, where the fuck have all these people come from? It's a really interesting thing. But with kind of the country versus Americana thing, where do you kind of see yourself sat? Like, if you had to pick a side or pick a genre, what do you kind of consider yourself as? Because like banjo is obviously associated with bluegrass and things, but you don't really consider yourself bluegrass. Like, what's kind of do you think you are?
I'd say, I mean, I don't really like the fact that there has to be sort of genre definitions, but I do get as well that it kind of helps in some situations. And I'd say that I'm definitely more folky Americana than country. This new EP is more country, but in general, I think if someone came to one of my live shows where there's a variety of songs in the set list, there's quite a lot of it's not really any kind of traditional country. I wouldn't say it's a bit more of a melting pot of stuff, and some of it's actually quite on the folky side, I'd say. Some of it's a bit more bluesy, a bit more country. So Americana is a kind of very convenient catch-all term for that, isn't it? So I think that's why I tend to label myself more as Americana, just because it kind of covers all aspects of whichever song I'm doing at that time.
No, that makes total sense. With your live setup, because I've only seen you play live once. I was at the Hen House Presents thing last year. You had that board as well, because the thing I enjoyed about you was obviously you had the banjo and stuff, but then you like obviously stopped that and it was purely like your own body, your percussion, like rhythm for that one song. What's the kind of setup for? Is that the wood mic'd or anything, or is there anything? Yeah,
so the wood is it's just like a little it's hollow underneath, and it's just got, you know, those little like bug pickup type piezo things you stick on. It's just got those underneath, so then that goes through a little sort of preamp pedal type thing and then into the desk, so that they can boost the bass and take out the treble of the wood, and it just makes it quite boomy. So yeah, that came about fairly early days. When I first started performing, I didn't have it, but then I wrote a song for Step In, and I saw someone using something similar at a festival, and I was like, oh yeah, that's really cool. So I got my friend to make me the wooden bit, and then I put the pickup on and worked out how to kind of get it working to a desk. And yeah, it's handy because, like, it's good for the stepping song, obviously, but for the rest of the songs, it gives it that beat, and it just adds that little bit of depth. Because the problem with the banjo, I mean, obviously, if I'm playing with double bass, it's nice because it's got the balance and it has the low end then of the bass. But when I'm on my own, it's an extremely high and dry instrument. You know, the tone is high because all the tuning's high. You've not got the bass strings of a guitar, and you've not got the resonance and the sustain of a guitar. It's just dry. So like it can be quite a stark high sound. So just having that nice sort of contrast with the stomp board, it's nice. And then Johnny likes it because when he's playing bass with me, it gives him a beat, because obviously we don't have a drummer, so that's always harder for a bass player when there's no drums keeping us all in time. So yeah, it was a good little invention in addition to my set, that board.
No, cool. And did you have to experiment with like the shoes that you wear for that? Because I can imagine, like, if you're wearing Vans, it's not going to have the same impact as if you wear.
Yeah, you definitely can't wear rubber-soled shoes. At first, I actually had some taps on my. I like just put some taps on an old pair of boots. And when I was playing with Ash, before I had this board that's got the pickup, I just had like a flat bit of wood, like more of a just standard piece of wood. And so for that, I used to use actual taps. But then since I've got this one that's mic'd up, any hard sole shoe is all right. So I tend to perform in cowboy boots because obviously they've got the hard sole and the good heel. So yeah, that works for all the stomping and the stepping.
No, awesome. And with, like, in my head, it's like you're playing the banjo and you're keeping rhythm with your feet. Obviously, that's from your dancing background and training to be able to keep that time, because I can drum a bit, but it breaks my brain the second I have to do like 4 things at once. So seeing you play live it's at a different level, because you see obviously like the banjo stuff and you see you're moving about, but it's creating that rhythm in time. Was that hard to kind of practice with? Did you have like a regimen that you did to kind of get in that zone and get to that level, or was it from your dance background and the banjo?
Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe the dance background does help, because instantly it's I can't play without tapping my foot. You know, when I watch people who play instruments but don't tap their feet, I'm fascinated. I'm like, how do you do that? How do you just do it in your head and not with your foot? So right from when I first started playing, I think I'd always use my foot as the rhythm. So yeah, it comes naturally, just kind of beating my foot. And then when I worked out the stepping songs, everyone always says it looks like, you know, rubbing your stomach and patting your head thing, you know, like how do you do that at the same time? But for me, I think, you know, it came quite naturally, sort of singing over the top of the stepping, because dancing is what I've always done. That actually came more naturally than the playing a lot of the time. So that was okay. But there is like, there's a song where I do singing, stepping and banjo at the same time. That one's more complicated. That's one where I don't want to have had like a lot of pints before I try doing it.
Yeah, or someone starts clapping on the offbeat and it's fun.
Yeah, I'm a bit worried about the kids on Monday, because they all have like shakers and stuff. I'll be like, oh my God.
That will be an interesting one. I hope you film some of it as well, just for posterity.
Yeah.
And with the Cloud of Dust EP coming out, when is that out? Because Fine Line's out April 29th. When's the full EP coming out?
The full EP will be the beginning of September. Yeah, that's the plan. And I'm trying to organise like a little tour around September for that. So yeah, that's the plan.
Cool. And with the EP, what was, obviously you've said it's like more of a country leaning sound than you'd normally go to. What was the thought process behind that? Because the Fine Line track I was listening to, and it stands out as if it's like, you know, if Dolly Parton put down a like The Grass is Blue too, it would fit perfectly.
Wow, thanks.
Like it's that type of song that has that kind of pedigree to it that like exemplifies like what like that kind of sound is. I think, what was the kind of thought process behind doing this, like making it sound like that and doing more of a country sound than EP?
I think just because certain songs, when I wrote them, I'd got that kind of sound in my head. You know, like obviously when you're composing a song and you've only got the one instrument, it's always a bit tricky because it's going to sound, you know, not that dynamic because you've only got that one instrument. But you sometimes hear in your head, don't you, what it would sound like with more instruments and everything. And I think Fine Line, right from the start, I always heard it with harmonies and like maybe with pedal steel. So I just, and percussion. So I'd always kind of heard it a bit bigger than I could play it. And for that reason, actually, it's one I hardly play out. I don't play it out very much because when I'm solo, I don't think it does it justice. I don't think it's one of the better songs to play solo. But if I've got a band with me, then, you know, I like the fuller sound. And then there's another one on the EP called, well, it's called Between the Lines, but the full title is I Should Have Read Between the Lines When You Crept Between the Sheets. And that is obviously harking back to 70s style country with the funny song titles. And that's very sort of Loretta Lynn kind of inspired. And I wrote that when I got back from America, and you know, we'd been to Texas and a lot of dive bars and like traditional like honky tonk stuff going on. And so again, when I wrote that, it's very tongue in cheek. It's a funny song. But I heard it bigger, like I heard it with like maybe some electric guitar, pedal steel, drums and stuff. And then Whiskey Feet, which I think will be the next single, because I'm going to bring maybe one more song out before the EP. And Whiskey Feet, again, has quite a big sound, like, and even the style of banjo I play on it, it's quite bluesy, it's bar chords. I think I might have played that at the gig you were at, I can't remember now. But that sort of has always needed a bit more of a like big drum beat on it. And like, so I don't know, they just sort of sat together. It felt like, you know, and then there's a song called Run, which was the first song I ever wrote. And that's got a very old timey feel to it. So we wanted to record that just live with, there's me, there's double bass, there's guitar and fiddle. And we were literally just four of us in the room, did a load of takes. So it's completely just live. And it has that feel to it. And then the only song that's maybe a little bit left field of all that is one called English Bay. And that's probably got more of a, you know, I think it sits okay with the rest for this EP, but that's probably more the direction that future things might take, because it's got that slightly more folky acoustic feel to it. And it's got like a droning organ through it. And now I've got an accordion player in my regular musician lineup. So yeah, I feel like that's maybe a direction that it'll go a bit more towards.
Cool. And with the tour in September, you're going to be going out with the full band?
It's going to be a trio tour mostly.
Awesome.
So it'll be, me, Johnny and Elle. So double bass, accordion, and Elle does gorgeous harmonies. So but the EP, sort of the big launch, like Sheffield show, that'll be full band. I'll have drums and fiddle and stuff for that.
Oh, amazing. Who is actually playing on your record with you? Who did the pedal steel for this, like, fine line?
So the pedal steel is a guy called Jim Widdup, who is based in Derby. And he's amazing, like absolutely like class pedal steel player. And I know him through Ash. So he plays in Ash's band, Ash Gray and the Burners. He does the pedal steel for them. And he does his own, loads of his own stuff and other bands and projects as well. So he's on the pedal steel. Thomas Dibb, who has recorded and produced it, is on guitar. And then obviously Johnny on bass, and it's a guy called Dan Weber on drums. I don't know if you know him. He's based more like Stockport, Manchester kind of way. Cool. But he's a brilliant drummer, and he was really what I needed actually for this project, because I've never played really with drums much, apart from like one or two big shows like for Tramlines or the EP launch and stuff. I don't regularly play with drums. And so I always find it hard when I'm thinking about recording, like what drum beat would go with it, because I don't know anything about drums and I've not worked with drummers. So I always struggle a bit with thinking, well, what percussion would fit with this song? Whereas Dan's so intuitive, like he only needed to hear stuff a bit and then he just came up with the perfect drum beat. So I was like, this is brilliant. And then when we were recording, he came up with like loads of good suggestions as well. So like there might have just been a couple of bars where he was like, well, it would sound much better if you just chopped that and went straight into this. And like all of a sudden the song was elevated. I was like, that's brilliant. But it's stuff that I wouldn't think of, but session musicians who know what they're doing,
it's crazy when you actually meet talented people. That's why I've got like my fiddle player is just insane. And it's like, oh, this is what real musicians are like. And it's like, oh shit, it's so much better. No, thank you. My name's still going on the front of it, but I really appreciate it.
It's one good bit of advice, isn't it? They always say, just surround yourself with good people. Because if you've got good people around you that know what they're doing, you'll look a million times better.
100%. So you've got the EP coming out in September, followed by a tour. When are you looking at maybe doing a full-length record in the next couple of years?
I don't know. I've always wanted to do the full album, but I equally don't want to rush it because I don't really have the money. But the thought of the Kickstarter campaign type things just makes me feel a bit sick. Not because I don't agree with them, but just the stress of it and the time it takes with a day job. And so I've got a feeling that there'll be one more EP in me before the main album. Only because I've got another little project that I feel would sit together well as a little collection. And I kind of want to get them out of the way. I don't know, in my head, it kind of works like we need to get those bits out the way because they're nice together. And like, I don't know what to do with them on an album. So I feel like there's one more of those because I've got a little plan in mind and then there'll be a full album. So it might still be a little while yet. But
no, that makes total sense. It's almost like it's a concept like EP, but it's not, you know, like a concept where it's like got a whole like fantasy story attached to it, like Kisses the Elder or something. It's just like these all fit in the same thing. So this going out one time, that makes total sense to be doing it in a way that makes sense to you and has collections that you can share with people in a way that's kind of cohesive.
Yeah, and I think there's less emphasis on needing albums as well nowadays because of streaming and how people absorb music. Don't get me wrong, I still love a good album, but I'm as guilty as anyone of like picking and choosing songs and doing playlists and stuff rather than necessarily sitting with an album, even though I do still do that. And so I feel like, I don't know, there doesn't feel as much pressure to have a full length album. And like, I watch people just putting out singles and like, they're great tracks. And it's like, well, yeah, why not just put out a single, get it on a playlist, and then people just enjoy that song for a while. And like, there's nothing wrong with that. So I feel like that might be, there might be like a couple of singles and another EP. And then eventually, maybe when I've won the lottery and, you know, or whatever, I'll sort of crack on with. But I also just want to get my sound right as well for an album. I feel like because my stuff is a little bit, I mean, obviously it's got the banjo as the lead thing, which ties it together, but they are quite different styles, a lot of my songs. And I feel like that's another reason to maybe put them on EPs, do more live shows, get everything how I want it, and then think, right, actually these sort of 11 tracks would work well together on a full length. Let's put the investment into that, you know. But I think that's a little way off.
No, there's definitely a thought process too. Well, we're coming up to the hour mark, so I'll let you go so you don't get too sick of me. But I really appreciate you taking the time to chat to us.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. It's been fun.
And that is episode 49 of Into the Van, Into the Bag. Banjo Jen's new single, Fine Line, is out right now. Go listen to it everywhere you can. Keep supporting the things you love. Keep doing the things you love. Go out to live shows. And until next time, stay safe. Peace.